Call this meeting to order for the Monday, September 18th, 2023, uh, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Um, Roll call, we've got Commissioner Dansby and Commissioner Kuhn that are absent. Um, Introduction of agenda and format. Af?
I could interrupt real, oops, if I could interrupt. Test. Hey, Josh.
Yeah, it didn't work here either.
Our green lights are on, but our microphones aren't working. Test, test. Is it coming through over there? Because I'm not hearing it here.
Hello? Do you have to
We'll find out.
I mean, otherwise we could pull the voice recorder out. Have them make their presentations from the front. I mean, did this before. I was going to say, I hope it's charged.
Keep thumbing on the microphone.
Maybe.
Clearly never been to an AV school. I'll tell you, never do that. Never. You're supposed to talk about Mary and her little lambs.
I was never a stagehand.
Test, 1, 2, 3. Test. Thank you.
Start over?
Yeah, and you could do the time as 6:31 though.
Okay. Do the time at 6:31?
That's when you open the meeting, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay, we're going to call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission into order at 6:31, September 18, 2023. We do have a quorum. Commissioner Dansby and Commissioner Kuhn are absent this evening. Next, introduction of agenda and format. Staff.
Thank you, Chair. So we will have a call to order for each item, followed by a staff report. Afterwards, we'll have the applicant's presentation. Following that, we'll have public comments in support or opposition to each case. At that time, please state your name and address for the record. Be brief and to the point within a 3-minute time frame. Following that, commission and staff will have their discussion. The commission will vote to recommend approval as presented, approval with conditions, denial of the request, or to table the item. And the city council will have their consideration on the conditional use permit that is on for tonight on their Monday, October 9th meeting. So items that were removed from the agenda, the final plat of Yanni Gardens was removed. And then on consent agenda, we have 2 items, excusal of absence for Commissioner Henricks and Commissioner Kuhn from the August 7th meeting, and then excusal for Commissioner Kuhn from the August 21st meeting.
I think we have 4 items, Martin. I think Commissioner Fortes is going to step out so we could keep the other 2 for Massey Oaks on the agenda, on the consent agenda.
Okay, I was just reading off the agenda first.
Okay.
Because we do order of the agenda and then discussion about the agenda and then bring it back to.
I see consent agenda with 2 items. My consent agenda has 4 items. That's where the confusion is.
Gotcha. Because consent agenda has a slide 2 that carries forward. It's all good. So from there, we'll have 2 plats, Massey Oaks Section 3 and 5. And then we'll have new business with a variance for the minimum lot width for property on Shadow Creek Parkway. We'll have a replat for property at 1321 Broadway Street. And then we'll have a conditional use permit for an office within the M1 district. And then we'll have input and discussion for a multifamily project at the Pearland Town Center. So with that, Chair, I will pass back to you for the consent agenda.
Okay, since there's no action as far as debate or anything on the consent agenda, I need a motion and a second.
Henricks, I motion.
Commissioner McCatherine, I second.
I'm assuming that motion and second was to approve.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing that there's no discussion, all those in favor, motion by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Approved by 4 to 0.
You want me to get Henry?
Okay, now that we got everybody back in here, we're going on to new business. Consideration and possible action, VARP 23-4, variance from the minimum lot width in a commercial district of Shadow. Hang on a minute. Shadow Creek Plan Development. A request of PEA group applicant of BW Shadow Creek LLC owner for approval of variance permitted in sections 2.6.1.1B1 of the Unified Development Code, ordinance number 2000-T, from section 2.4.4.6 C1B to allow the creation of two lots, both of which are less than the minimum lot width requirement in the commercial district of the Shadow Creek Plan Development, described to it. General location is 11213 Shadow Creek Parkway. Do I have a motion?
Commissioner McCatherine, I'll move.
You said motion for approval? Okay. Commissioner Fortis, second.
Staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Florence is out sick tonight, so you get to hear from me for all of the plat reviews. So this is a variance request for property in Shadow Creek Ranch. The intended use of the property is for an oil change facility. This is splitting the property into somehow got all kinds of weirdly ordered there. Apologies for that. As shown on the screen, you can see that this property has had some development to it already. The east portion of the property is developed with an Arby's, and the west portion is now seeking to be split off and then have an oil change facility developed on that piece of property. So you can see that the future land use plan shows this all as retail offices and services, which meets the future land use and intended use of the property. A little bit of history on this site. The prior plat of the property was from 2008 with commercial site 18B. In 2016, we had a variance for the minimum lot width, which got denied. And one of the causes on that was the consistency with character of Shadow Creek commercial areas. In 2018, half of the lot was developed as a restaurant with a drive-through. And then in 2022, there was a conditional use permit approved to develop the other half of the property with an oil change facility. You can see the variances requested and how the minimum requirements are met. It's really just the lot width that is asking for the variance. So as you can see from the proposed lot layout, this is showing the two lots as intended, and they are very similar with slight modifications as to what was brought forward in 2018. This kind of has a mixed bag of criteria for approval. As you can see, some of the circumstances are not necessarily affecting all of the properties within the vicinity. And as such, the variance isn't necessarily necessary for the preservation of the enjoyment of the land, as it can still be developed with the two uses. So the subdivision of the property isn't necessarily needed. And that the hardship suffered by the petitioner is caused wholly in part by the petitioner's request to have this as two separate lots. With all of that said, though, we are still recommending approval of the requested variance as it meets the minimum, or it meets the zoning requirements, all of which except for the lot width that was shown in that previous table. And that granting of this variance will allow the property to be subdivided and put under separate ownership, which is part of the desire for them to be able to subdivide the property. And staff believes that this is meeting the character of the area to have the smaller commercial lots for development. With that said, we will pass back to you, Chair.
Okay, that brings us to the applicant's presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Chris Nichols. I'm an attorney with the law firm Wilson, Cribbs & Gorin in Houston, Texas. I'm here with Isaac Suarez and Glenn Freeland. And really, I'm here tonight to answer any questions. I think the staff report is very accurate and speaks for itself. And we're ready to proceed with the planned development on the property. And I would entertain any questions that you might have of me.
Okay, thank you. Right now, we may, after we have our discussion, we may have some questions, but you can go ahead and just stay close there.
I'll hang out here. Thank you.
Okay, persons wishing to speak for or against? Asking another, people's wishing to speak for and against? Asking for the third and final time, anyone wishing to speak for and against? All right, seeing none, that opens it up to commissioner discussion.
Just to make sure I understand, this is an automotive use. Automotive uses throughout the whole entire city require a CUP, and it shows here in 2022 that they received one. Is there a 1 year or a 2 year expiration for CUPs?
So conditional use permits have a 1 year expiration date to them. Patrick, do you remember offhand? I want to say that we're real close to being able to approve this one. I think they've gone through first and second round of reviews, and the plat may be one of the things that is held up on.
But they could always get an extension for another year anyways. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure we're in that.
They're within that first window.
Perfect. So no CUP needed after this. This is simply a variance from the lot width of 150 into these two parcels, splitting up the parcel, and it puts them in a, and I personally have no problem with it. I'm very familiar with the commercial in Shadow Creek from a former life, and have no problem at all with this.
Okay, seeing none, call for a vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Carries 5-0.
Thank you, Commissioners. May we be excused?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You don't want to stick around for the rest of this? That brings us to the next for consideration, possible action, plat 23-106, replat of Lower Kirby East Pond 2, public hearing, a request by Patrick Lane, LJA Engineering, the applicant on behalf of Lower Kirby Pearland Management District owner for approval of replat of Lower Kirby East Pond 2, creating one lot on 20.555 acres of land. General location, southwest corner of Fruge Road and Kirby Drive. Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Henrik, second.
Staff report.
Thank you, Chair. So as mentioned, this is a replat to combine a few lots to allow for some detention pond to be created. This property is all within the S3 Spectrum 3 zoning district, and the future land use has this all for the Lower Kirby District, or the Lower Kirby Upper Center District. So this is the proposed plat that helps to bring together all three of those lots into one lot for the development of some retention and detention to serve that area. Staff has taken a look at the criteria for approval, comes back with a yes on everything, and we recommend approval of this replat. That's, sir, I'll pass back to you.
Okay, that brings us to the applicant's presentation. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Patrick Lane. I live at 2018 Autumn Fern Drive. I'm with LJ Engineering, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, just you can stay close.
Okay.
All right. Persons wishing to speak for or against this item? Asking a second time, people wishing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, persons wishing to speak for or against this item? Seeing none, opens it up to commissioners. Being that we have no discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those against, same sign. Seeing none, 5-0 pass. That brings us to number 3 on the night, consideration and possible action, plat 23-107, Anchor Subdivision, replat number 2. A request by Amanda Rabius, applicant on behalf of Jeff Barnett, owner, for a partial replat of Lot 3 of Anchor Subdivision, creating one lot of 1.3552 acres. General location, west portion of 1321 Broadway Street, Pearland, Texas. Can I have a motion for approval?
Motion for approval.
Commissioner McCatherine, second.
Staff report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a replat making for one lot. Lot size is 1.3552 acres, and it is within the general business zoning district. You can see the plat of the property. Mary's Creek kind of cuts through the back portion of it. All of this property is within the retail offices and services future land use, and it is zoned for commercial developments that it's meeting the intent. You can see the previous plat of this property included an area that was on the other side of Mary's Creek. This plat shows a few changes that have been made that are pointed out here. We've got some additional sanitary sewer easement that is being provided, additional detention or additional dedication to Mary's Creek, and then the relocation of some existing easements that help trail along the east property line here. Originally, these kind of cut through the middle of the property, so it made it fairly difficult to navigate to get building and parking on this remainder portion. As you can see from the criteria for approval, staff is recommending approval of this replat. We'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. Applicant's presentation.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Boutte with Windrose Land Services at 5353 West Sam Houston Parkway North in Houston, Texas. Just here to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Hi,
I'm Faith with PRD Land Development Services. I live at 15722 Cap Rock Drive in Webster, Texas, 77598. I'm just here to answer any questions.
Okay, stay close. Persons wishing to speak for or against. Second time, people's wishing to speak for or against. Third and final time, people wishing to speak for or against. All right, that brings it to commissioners' discussion.
Is this the property between, I believe it's an Arby's and the 888, and has a residence kind of behind it that was all one piece before?
Correct. So the Arby's is here at the hard corner of Chantel and Broadway. 888 is right here, and that residence is back here.
Thank you.
Well, we're working y'all hard tonight, aren't we? All right.
I am going to actually ask them to do a little bit more work. Jeff and Faith, since you are not Amanda, if you'd be so kind as to fill out the green sheet so we can make sure that we tie your name and address with you being here on behalf of the applicant. Thank you.
He is going to make you work harder. All right, can I call for a vote? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. 5-0. 4. Thank y'all. All right, that brings us to item number 4, consideration possible action, conditional use permit application, CUP 23-15, public hearing, a request by R. Stephen Hussman Architecture, PLLC, applicant on behalf of ERSRE Holdings, owner for approval of a conditional use permit for an office within the light industrial M1 district on approximately 2.0923 acres of land. General location, east of 4300 Rice Dryer Road. Can I have a motion? Well, yeah, can I have a motion for approval?
You can ask for that now, or since we don't know what the conversation is going to be, you could ask for staff report now. And then if during the conversation somebody comes to the realization that they wanted a condition, they could add that, and then you don't have to do 2 votes in only 1.
All right, what he said. So that brings it back to staff report.
Thank you, Chair. For this item, I will introduce Patrick Bauer. Patrick, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. As mentioned, the conditional use permit tonight is for an office use within the light industrial district, and specifically, it is for the project at east of 4300 Rice Dryer Road. And at 4300 Rice Dryer Road is where the current ERSCAT development is, and this is proposed as an expansion of their current business onto this property for a 10,000 square foot office use. And the future land use is public, semi-public, and to date, staff has only received 1 phone call in favor of the request. So looking at the zoning of the property, as mentioned, the subject property is the M1 light industrial zoning, and then to the north and to the east is also light industrial M1 zoning. And then to the west, which is the current development, and to the south is planned unit development zoning. As looking at the future land uses around it, we see that public, semi-public, future land use designation to the east and south, and then an industrial future land use to the north and to the west. And so looking at an aerial of the property, that warehouse office use to the west is the current development. And then moving towards the subject property, we see there's some existing buildings, which we'll get into. This is a little bit of an older aerial. It's from 2022. So in terms of the history, those buildings are not there anymore. They'll get a little more into that in the history. And then to the north are also warehouses. And to the south is a retail store for farm supplies. It's the Tractor Supply. And then to the east is some undeveloped land, which has potential for commercial uses on it. And then some history on the property. It was annexed in 1959 into the city, and then it was developed with a 32,240 square foot manufacturing building, which you kind of saw in that aerial, as well as a 1,400 square foot office building in 1981. Coming more recently, the original buildings were demolished in 2022, and the property was platted most recently in June 2023. So here we get a view currently, this is about a week ago, so you can see those buildings are gone. And this is from Rice Dryer Road looking onto the property. And so here we get a proposed site plan for the property. And Rice Dryer Road is on the right side of the larger image. The image that is to your left is kind of the overall development, considering the current development that ERSCAT has, as well as what they're proposing, which is kind of that smaller portion at the bottom of the white image. Looking at the right-hand image, we get a view of that light gray building in the middle. The rectangular is the 10,000 square foot office space. We have some parking at the front of the property. And then at the back, which is that larger white area, is some additional pavement that the business may use as some overflow equipment storage, potentially in the future. And then looking at the proposed landscape plan, this is just a current landscape plan, and it's showing some of the required landscaping that would be along Rice Dryer for the frontage. And here we get kind of a rendering of the building looking from Rice Dryer Road. This would be the north elevation of the building. And here we get some additional elevations with that north one being looking at Rice Dryer, and then technically if we were standing in the Tractor Supply, the south elevation is what we would see from there, or kind of the east elevation as well. And so looking at some of the review criteria, it's important to note that as you saw, the future land use designation is public, semi-public, which is kind of interesting. However, staff does find that in the comprehensive plan, there are some policies that talk about redeveloping the 35 corridor and kind of bringing some of those properties, kind of redeveloping them into uses that are suitable for today. And then additionally, staff would also like to point out that the designation is currently in the works of being fixed through the update to the comprehensive plan. And the proposed use would be consistent with the commercial center place type, which is what's proposed for that area. And then in terms of the thoroughfare plan, the proposed use has frontage on Rice Dryer Road, which is a minor collector, and the right-of-way was dedicated at the time of platting. And then in terms of the UDC, the use will be required to follow all regulations of the M1 zoning district in respect to landscaping, screening, and parking. And lastly, that the subject property does have access to city utilities along Rice Dryer Road. And so looking at the approval criteria for a conditional use permit, staff found that the request met all 7 of the approval criteria. And specifically looking a little closer at approval criteria 3 and 6, these are pertaining to some aspects to minimize adverse effects, which kind of pertains to one of the conditions staff added concerning the overflow equipment storage at the rear of the property and its visibility from other properties as well as Broadway. And so looking at the staff analysis, the proposed use meets the established criteria for approval of a conditional use permit. As mentioned, just to state it again, the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and it is to be noted that the future land use designation is in the works of being fixed. And then lastly, that additional condition, staff has 2 of them, which we mentioned in the following slide, and they pertain to the exterior building facade and screening for the proposed equipment storage. So therefore, staff recommends approval of the requested conditional use permit with the following conditions. Condition 1 is that the exterior building facades shall be developed in substantial conformance with materials as depicted in the facade renderings. And condition 2, not criteria. The vegetative screening consisting of a continuous row of shrubs with a height of 6 to 8 feet shall be provided along the southeast and the east property boundary, extending from the proposed drainage easement, which is kind of on that southern property boundary, to the proposed landscaping along the east property boundary, as shown in the applicant packet, to screen the proposed equipment storage from any future commercial uses to the east of the property. And we can additionally show that on the map if needed. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you. That brings us to the applicant's presentation. State your name and address, please.
Steve Hussman, 1002 Honey Hill Drive, Houston, Texas. I'm here just to answer any questions y'all may have.
Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to anyone wishing to speak for or against. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? Second time? Third and final time? Anyone wishing to speak for or against? All right, seeing none, moves to staff's discussion. Commission discussion.
I don't have any problem with this CUP. It meets the current character of where it's proposed to be. My only suggestion would be that if we approve this, it would be with the recommendations for the conditions that staff had. So approving, but also with the suggested recommendations that staff provided would be my vote. Thank you.
Our landscape architect has already added the additional landscaping to his plans, which we will be resubmitting to the city for permitting.
Great, sounds good. Thank you.
I'm actually in favor of seeing a really nice new building. And so I'm in favor of the CUP with the conditions that staff recommended.
I agree with my fellow commissioners.
Short and sweet. The FLUP, the future land use plan, it did say semi-public, and I'm racking my brain. I don't remember. Go ahead. You already know what.
So this is a known issue with the existing future land use plan. The PISD building just south of here is where this block should be. And it's just an error in the map that hasn't been fixed. It is being fixed in the upcoming comprehensive plan.
And that
So I'll stop talking about how this is a known issue and now it's a fixed issue.
Got it. And I appreciate him mentioning that as well in the presentation. Is this the same owner? And I guess I should ask first, sir, are you your company owns both the existing site and this new site?
I'm the architect that's representing the owner, but yes, it's common ownership.
Okay. And it is an ownership, not a rental or a...
That is correct.
And I guess the reason I'm asking is why isn't this simply an addition, an addition of corporate offices to an existing manufacturing instead of a rezone?
So this property originally was under a different ownership from the, goodness gracious, the Rice Towers and everything else that was within there. At that time, the owner was not wanting to participate with the EDC's changes in what the proposal was for that area. Or at least to my understanding. I may have a poor understanding there, but now it has changed ownership, and they've demolished those old buildings that were there. And now, because the M1 district allows for office as a conditional use permit, it was easier to go through the conditional use permit 45-day window than it was to go through the zone change 90-day window to get it through the city's approvals.
Okay, well then that makes sense. And I'm assuming you mentioned the EDC, they're in favor of this. I'm sure they were in favor of bringing those three beautiful buildings down. So they've blessed this as well. Everybody's happy.
So we actually have, what's the word I'm looking for? Not development agreement, it's a,
The EDC has an agreement with ERS CATS in regards to portions of this property to remove those buildings and get their building approved on this site.
correct.
Well, with all that in mind, I'll make a motion for approval. With the conditions or without? Since the applicant has agreed to those conditions, with those conditions.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're going to call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Approval 5-0. That brings us to the last item tonight. Now, just to be sure, we don't vote on this. This is strictly discussion, correct? Okay. Commission input and discussion, proposed multifamily at Pearland Town Center. Input and discussion, a request by Drake Domney, Pelican Builders applicant on behalf of CBL, Pearland Town Center owner, for a planned development workshop as required by the Unified Development Code regarding a proposed multifamily development consisting of 124 single-family rental dwellings units with an amenity center on approximately 13.7 acres of land. General location, south side of 11200 Broadway Street, Pearland, Texas. Okay, since I'm not calling for a vote or anything, staff report on it?
Sure, thank you. So this is a continue of discussion from the Pelican Builders Group. You have previously seen a discussion at the May joint workshop meeting for this site, but they kind of left with a mixed bag of discussion points there from that workshop, and in order to give them a little better clarity and direction, they requested to come back and have further discussions on other types of development that they could propose for this site. So this is just a discussion in between the P&Z and the developers to discuss other potentials for the development of the site. And with that, Drake, let you all go up to the podium. And
As they step to the podium, I just wanted to put the caveat out there that while traditionally planning and zoning and city council have joint workshops for PD amendments, this particular workshop is not with city council. And it may be that y'all come to a different conclusion than what city council ultimately does for the zone change request. But I think the plan was to get some input. You know, that they wanted some guidance to see which product you want. And the hope is that eventually you and city council agree. If not, there may be a supermajority vote required when the actual zone change comes forward.
Good evening, can we start? Okay, yeah, hi, I'm Derek Darnell with Pelican Builders, joined by Drake Dominy, also with Pelican, and Lewis Hilton with us with CBL Properties. You know, at the moment, we would be joint applicants. CBL, as you know, owns the property in the town center, all the retail and restaurants, and we're a residential specialty development company. And if all would come together at this property, we would be partners with them and we would develop a high quality residential project at this subject property. As Martin mentioned, we came before P&Z and council, I don't know, several months ago, and presented to you guys a concept that we call build to rent. So it's a high quality residential community of rental houses. It's a gated community. It has a great pool and amenity center and a park for dogs, and it's very attractive. The meeting went well. I mean, we heard feedback from some P&Z. We heard feedback from council. I think in general, people said nice things about us and our capabilities. One of the main takeaways after that night was, at least some of it was from your own staff members that night, and then in a follow-up meeting, some from other comments we heard was just an ongoing debate about, okay, what really should be built there? And we get that, we understand that. So it occurred to us that, we probably should take a step back and help educate or study and become a resource to P&Z, to council, to your own staff, to help you study and just discuss, okay, what makes sense here? What do we want? What would we be happy with? And so we were glad to do that. A little background on us. If you look at the slide that's on the screen or in front of you, the next few images, you're going to see our company specializes in residential development, but of a lot of different types. We do build-to-rent housing, which is the one concept we presented last time. We do multifamily developments, which you're familiar with as far as multifamily projects around Pearland. We do high-end patio home, brownstone for sale housing. We do mid-rise and high-rise for sale condominium development. So, a lot of times you'll get an applicant who has one vision, one niche, and we certainly know that and understand that. But in our case, we do all of these things. And so we come to you tonight really to remind you or point out that, I'll go to the next slide, you see a whole slew of images of what we have built. And you're going to see in that slide, like I say, for sale little brownstones, high-rise condos, multifamily. And again, we want you to know we're a resource. We know all of these, and we would be delighted to build any one of these that you guys could support, assuming our own partners at CBL, assuming the market in general can support it and that it makes just fundamental sense. It makes economic sense and market sense, meaning the market would respond to it. So that's why we're here tonight, is really to, like I say, we want to be a resource. We want you to have confidence that we know what we're doing, that we would do something really nice, very nice. I don't know of anything we've built before that hasn't been a high quality project that we're proud of, and we've done it in Houston now. The founder of our company, going back to the 70s, and I've been with him 22 years, but from Sugar Land, Katy, Woodland, Shenandoah, and then all over Houston's inner loop area. And we've worked with bodies and councils and commissions just like yours. So we just want you to have confidence, and we want to be a resource. That's the main thing I want you to take away. And also, I'll say, last time we came here, we had our planning engineer really lead the presentation. We've never pushed anything through Pearland, so we just followed his lead. And it was very just kind of factual and a vanilla template of just information that I know you do need or the staff needs at some point. Tonight is purely our presentation. It's just strong imagery and graphics, so you really get a sense of quality and what we're capable of. So wanted to say that again. Last time that presentation, we had nothing to do with it. And I love engineers, but it was an engineer's presentation. So enough of that. With that being said, I'm going to flip through a few things. This is the product type, this slide I just pulled up, that we presented last time. And our brand name is called Lighthaven, and it would be Lighthaven at Pearland Town Center. Again, this is a full page rendering where you can fully appreciate if you begin to understand this concept and you liked this and you supported it, it is very attractive, very high end. There was a lot of questions last time about, well, how much is brick? And, I can guarantee you this will be very attractive. If we didn't make it attractive, it wouldn't be successful. This next slide is more imagery of the same product type, the build-to-rent housing, the Lighthaven brand. What you're looking at is you're seeing some images of the club center, the resident lounge, and you can, as I said, just take a look at those images. Very attractive. You see the pool. You can see a street scene of some of the homes and the feel of the community. Believe me, if you were a resident, you wanted to live near the town center, you weren't ready to buy a home, or you didn't want to buy a home because for whatever reason, as we all know, not everybody's a home buyer, you would love to live in this product. This would be the best thing around Pearland if you just, like I said, if you wanted to rent and not buy a home, and you wanted to live near restaurants and shops in the town center. It would be wonderful. I can guarantee you that. Here again, same product type, the build-to-rent option. This is just two larger snapshots of the club center. And again, you can I think the images speak for themselves. It's beautiful, inviting. You would want to go to that space and enjoy it. Okay, the next series of slides introduces traditional multifamily and 4-story, multifamily. This is the architect that we use for suburban multifamily, Meeks Partners. This is not designed for this site necessarily, but that is the scale and a style and the level of finish that you could expect if multifamily was the preferred option. And I'll come back to the product types and the pros and cons of the multifamily when we get through these images. This is another image of what a pool area in the leasing clubhouse facility would look like. Again, hey, it looks like somewhere you'd go on a vacation, and imagine people be living there. This is just another wonderful shot of that amenity package. This image here gives you a sense of scale. This architecture is actually probably very complimentary of the last Suba done and built product there in Town Center. This is not something I'm saying it would look exactly like this, but it gives you an idea of what you could see as you look towards the south end of the Town Center past the existing multifamily. And again, for multifamily standards, it's very, very attractive. Here's an image of, again, you find creative little places to have some green areas for dogs, and it could be also for, if it had a playground set for small children. So that goes through the short presentation for tonight's just kind of Q&A of product and images. To recap, I feel like that night we were here last, between council and P&Z, there was a pretty good feeling that, okay, this piece of property can't be some large entertainment idea. It can't be an office property. CBL has, at the moment, enough of the retail and restaurants that they would want. And having high-density residential is logical. It suits the existing retail and restaurants. I know the staff here, Martin's staff, and people who do land planning for a living would tend to agree that when you're around a town center, high-density retail, to support those businesses and the lifestyle and the activity, the foot pedestrian activity, high-density residential is what should be built here. I think it's now just down to, okay, the specifics of what will allow. And so to summarize this presentation, option one, which again is what we showed you a little bit of last time, is the build-to-rent housing, the Lighthaven at Pearland Town Center brand. and we show you some high-level data points. You know, on one hand, it would be, if that was the product, 124 of these units. They all have two-car garages. It'd be about a $47 million valued asset or project. The other option is the multifamily. You'd have more people living there. You'd have over 300. And, you know, it'd have a higher value. It's just a bigger, improved property. And so, again, as Martin said, there's no vote or action required tonight. We're here as a resource. We are willing, and so is CBL, our partner and the current landowner. We're willing to go the distance and work with both P&Z council and then mainly your planning staff, and your building department, and your life safety, you know, your fire department. We're willing to go through all the details that you have to do to make sure the development is done with their input and access and certain design criteria. We will do that. But after spending, I don't know, maybe half a year with some informal meetings, and then the last time we had this joint P&Z and council, it was clear to us that there wasn't quite enough direction as a developer in the private community for us to really be able to move forward and spend money and a lot of time. We do need your help as well. You know, we need somehow, and I don't know all the inner workings of council and P&Z, but when we've done this in other areas in Houston suburban markets, at some point, the staff gets clarity of the product that is wanted and would be supported. And yes, there's a process. And yes, we have to work together on some refinements and details, but tonight is important, and the follow-up is important, and how somebody like us, and when I say us, I mean CBL, the current landowner, and the landowner and the property owner of your town center, and us as the residential arm of the development. So it's a two-way street here tonight, and then in the follow-up meetings. We really need good feedback and clarity. We believe both of these options that I talked about tonight are viable, would be an enhancement. They can be financed, executed, and we strongly believe everyone in Pearland would be happy with them. The other two property types, because last meeting in that joint session, there was council members, and one said, hey, I'd love to see a big tower, or not a tower, but a big building with a park and like a condominium, and then high-end urban housing that's for sale. It probably prices out too expensively. So there are other residential options, but we really believe these two make the most sense for all parties. And we'd be proud and happy and with either one of them. As I said, the last time we came before you, it was really just presenting that one concept. And we did that because we didn't realize there was that much, I don't know if I'd say debate, but, you know, uncertainty, and it is a newer concept. The build-to-rent housing is newer. But, you know, I said it earlier, we wanted to take a step back, give you a little more confidence in our capabilities, our past development, and come to you as a resource. And so I think that's it. Drake, did I miss anything? So Martin, you know, this is new territory for us as far as how the back and forth works from here, but we're here to answer questions. And we do want to move forward, but we at some point, somehow, you know, I see it's three bodies. You have your own staff who are wonderful. They advise, I would imagine they advise council, they advise P&Z. You have your staff, you have P&Z, and then you have council. And if I'm missing anybody, let me know. But somehow, we need support and really clarity of what you want, and then we'll go make it happen. So I think that's probably all. And we're here, both of us, all three of us are here to answer any questions.
Okay. Let's kick it off for discussion as far as council is concerned, the commissioners are concerned.
Clarity from my perspective for what my thoughts were after the presentation that you are referencing was that I did not realize that the townhomes, that style was going to be a rent to own. And when I think of a missing middle market, I think of a market that allows for home ownership in terms of townhomes and things of that nature. So that was my issue with that, not necessarily the style of the dwelling, but the fact that it was going to be rent to own. I wanted something that people would be able to own in that area when it came to that type of rendering. Now that I know that it would be rent to own concerning that style, I was leaning more towards a multifamily, maybe not a tower, but I do like the fact of a little more height in that area if it was like 4 or 5 stories. And I know here I saw reference of 4 stories. I do feel like it fits the current character of the town center with some of the housing options that are available there. And with the multifamily, I'm open with that still being rental property or something that you're renting or leasing. So that's my feedback, that if these are our 2 options, then I would lean more towards option 2 because I feel that it fits the current character of what the town center is currently offering. And I'm not interested in a build to rent option for that particular area. So hopefully I'm clear in my commentary that I provided, and I'll pass it on to my fellow commissioners.
And thank you. When you say you're not interested in the build to rent option, is that because of the scale or is that because of the concept, or can you expound on that?
So for me, when I think diversity in the housing market, not everyone wants the single family picket fence, but people do want ownership options. And so the way that, and if I'm interpreting this wrong, please correct me. But the fact that it's just that it would be rentals in that area, like it's an option, but not necessarily home ownership, was how I looked at it. And if that is the case, that's not what I would be interested in for that area. I would want everybody to be an owner, not necessarily that there's an option because somebody might not exercise that option.
Yeah, okay, that's why it's not rent to own. It's exactly like the 4-story rendering you saw, except for they're rental cottage homes.
So
you don't rent them and then buy them later.
Okay, so it's totally a rental.
It's all rental.
Oh yeah,
and so
absolutely don't like that.
You guys aren't really familiar with it, and I know one of the council members is, who's, I know council's not here, but just think of it this way, and we like both product types, okay? But the build to rent, the rental housing has become so interesting because you get a 2-car garage. Let's say you have a big dog, you get a place for the dog. Let's say you like to barbecue, you get a real area to barbecue, not a little concrete patio, or a balcony. And you really live like you live in a little home. You don't share a wall with your neighbor. And so that's what build to rent housing has become, why it's become interesting to certain people. But, so again, here though, if it's about scale for your town center, or we feel like we should have more people living there, then that would suggest option 2. But that's why we came tonight. We know not everybody knows this build to rent brand. And a lot of it is done just like anything, just like you have really bad housing, bad builders and cheap houses, and you have well thought, there's bad single family rentals and build to rent products. We would not do that in your town center. This would be high end, it'd be managed by a third party company. So it's again, want to answer all the questions. And I think that helps you understand it's not rent to own.
Okay, and so for this, in terms of lawn care and those types of things, the actual renter would be responsible for that,
Oh, no,
correct?
no, no, no.
So you're responsible for everything.
No, the management company, just like the town center itself and just like any multifamily, they maintain it professionally. It'll look pristine. That's the beauty of it is, it'll look better than single-family neighborhoods look. Because we all know in a single-family neighborhood, if a guy doesn't want to cut his grass, he doesn't cut his grass. And if he leaves his stuff in his yard, this is high-end, third-party, professionally managed. And it's fairly new. You have nothing like it so far in Pearland. There's not even one to point to.
That's fair. And to my point, now that I know it's completely rental, when I think of diversity for housing, people want different ownership options. Not necessarily I have to rent for the rest of my life in order to live in Pearland. And that was some of the conversations that I've had with citizens, that I've had with fellow colleagues, that for Pearland, the price point to get out here, some think to be expensive depending on the line of work that you're in that would afford you to be here. But then when you're here, what kind of options are we offering citizens for diversity of housing in terms of ownership, not in terms of you can come here and pay rent for the rest of your life, but can you come here and own something? And that's why in terms of this particular dwelling, I would be more interested in something that someone could own versus them just coming in and being a constant renter. And so if renting is what we're doing with whichever dwelling type we choose, I would be more open to option 2, where it's that multifamily, because we already have that in the town center, and I feel like it'll blend right in with the current character of that area.
Okay, well, yeah. And to follow up on one point I made earlier, to own property at this site in the town center, and if you applied the planning, the comprehensive plan for the town center and the kind of density and what they would want, it wouldn't be missing middle. It wouldn't be affordable.
Right.
So I think, at some point, council and the commission has to understand it's just not gonna happen. It's not gonna be economically viable for anybody.
Right, for that
Buyers, us.
area.
So I think I appreciate the feedback that your preference would be the traditional multifamily.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, I'm in agreement with her. I wouldn't want to own anything right next to the town center ever. So I'm definitely more in favor of option 2, the 4-story multifamily development, because at least we're providing more units of housing in that case. And I agree with her, it will blend in with the housing that's already there, which is 4-story. And that's all.
Before I tell you my opinion, what's the average square footage of each option? Option 1, what's your average square footage? And option 2, what's the average square
I'm
footage?
gonna let Drake tell you that. I've got a good guess, but I'm gonna let him tell you.
The average square footage of the single-family homes would be about 1,700 feet. The majority of those are 3 bedrooms, some 2 bedrooms and some 4 bedrooms. And then on the option 2, the multifamily, the average size would be around 900 square feet.
2-bedroom?
Mostly 1 bedroom, probably 60% 1 bedrooms and 40% 2 bedrooms.
As been mentioned earlier, affordability is one of my main concerns in the city of Pearland. We are outpriced for many of our first responders, teachers, those kind of workers. So my option would be number 2. My biggest concern is that, a 1-bedroom really isn't large enough if you have children or you want children, unless you have the ability to get a 2-bedroom and then how many children you have. So that's my my only concern, because I think you mentioned earlier about there was a school that was going to be close by and that kind of thing. Well, if you're a single person renting a one-bedroom unit, you're not contributing to the school system because you probably don't have a child. So those are my only concerns, but I like the affordability of the smaller units in option 2.
Howdy. I have short-term memory, issues, so I don't remember a lot of what you guys showed, but some of the things you said brought some things back. But first off, the location itself, CBL, back then we called them PUDs, today we call them PDs. CBL went to great lengths, and the city staff also went to great lengths in this PUD. City council members and planning and zoning stayed up till 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning arguing over the minutia of that project. So I won't tell any stories. But the fact that it's a difficult PUD, I congratulate you guys for even trying. It's difficult to work with in a challenging parcel to put a facility on. And the current staff, I think, is I want to say much more helpful. That wouldn't be nice to the past staff, but they're much more, I believe, business friendly and development friendly. And so I think you have a path of success in front of you with the current staff, I would hope. I think you're getting some guidance here. I was particularly interested when you said it was a JV. I didn't recall that in the first presentation. And those are my words, the JV process between yourself and CBL. But that does, at first I thought, well, that's strange. But then thinking it over a little bit, it gives me a little comfort that if CBL is staying in the project, you're going to have to perform with a classy concept one way or the other, because they have ownership in the entire.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Yeah. So I also remember the recent history of this parcel when we had a townhome project that came in. Unfortunately, it came in with another, it was a workshop at the time, and the first workshop was located at an old town center, or old town site, and they're actually about to break ground vertically. They've done the infrastructure work, I've noticed as I've driven by there. And they had a beautiful product. Sullivan Brothers, I'm sure if you guys built within the 610, you know the Sullivan Brothers builders. And then followed this town center, a town center product. And unfortunately, it wasn't as nice as the Sullivan Brothers were planning, and so they pretty much got chased out of the room that night. But in that presentation, and the reason I brought that up is that the presenter at the time, a gentleman named Muhammad that was with the city staff, mentioned that rather than this product that was shown to us, he'd prefer multifamily, and that was the first time I'd ever heard that from any staff member or any council member, to say they wanted multifamily is a big paradigm change in the city. And, being in the field that you're in, multifamily sometimes is a 4-letter word in a city. And I think you're not hearing that tonight, and that's an exception and a new thing for us as well as a Planning and Zoning Commission and council as well. With that in mind, I have to say Muhammad was right. As for BTR, and I'm jumping around a little bit, that's how my brain unfortunately works. As for BTR, I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem at all with it. I think it makes sense in certain areas and locations. This being one of them, it could fit here. The fact that you don't really have neighbors or a neighborhood that would say, I don't want that neighbor, my next door neighbors being rental community, you're not going to have that. You're in a PUD, and your neighbor is a big lake and a mall. So you're not going, and the part owner is the mall owner. So it would be an ideal location for a BTR. I believe when you were here last, I think the mayor asked if you were selling this product, if it were a for sale, what would be the price tag on these dwellings? And I believe you guys said somewhere $600,000 to $700,000 product.
Correct.
So that tells me how nice of a product you were willing to put on the ground as a BTR, which also is not as common as some of the other BTRs that some of us may or may not be aware of. So I appreciate that the BTR would be a very nice product. And as well, the one thing negative that you might have said in all of your discussions, I think you said traditional multifamily, and I'm here to tell you that for me, I don't like traditional. To me that means garden style, and I don't think that's what you meant by that. I think you meant just the traditional multifamily. I do like
not the style, just as a difference from build to rent housing, right? Just,
We call garden style the 3-story kind of separate buildings. This would be more of a uniform.
just like you saw in the photos. Yeah.
Sure, and that's a good looking product. These photos show a very good looking product. 4-story, I don't have a problem with. 5 or 6 story, you don't have neighbors. Again, my concern is, and actually I had discussions with some staff members prior about another BTR location, and the reason BTR was selected rather than a multifamily was because it was adjacent to residences, existing residences that have been there since 2002 or maybe 1998, somewhere in that time frame. And to go in and put a multifamily adjacent to that product doesn't make any sense for the existing people that live there. Makes a lot of sense for the use of the land, but just from a privacy standpoint to the current owners, adjacent neighbors, it seems inequitable. So in your case, again, there's a lake and a walking path, or a detention pond, I guess, a amenitized detention pond. I wouldn't have a problem if you came in with a product over 4 stories, and I know some of my fellow planning and zoning members don't agree with that, but I'm just saying, for me, and that's pretty much it. I know I rambled a lot. I was trying to give you what I thought the good points in the of your presentation and where I sit. BTR, again, I don't have a problem with it, but I just don't know. If you gave me a choice between the two, I'd probably pick the 4-story multifamily development. I am bothered a little bit, though, honestly, by the process itself. I would have preferred, and this is only me again, one out of 5 here, I would have preferred that council be with us tonight. We tend to, in the joint workshops, we tend to speak first, and then council speaks second, and constantly when council says things, I think, why didn't I think of that? And so I would have appreciated their input tonight as well. So I wish we'd have done this in a workshop, and I know y'all didn't force this issue. I'm certainly not putting blame on anybody, but I would have preferred the council for us both to hear it so you could get feedback from both. My concern is that you guys hear our comments, and then you go back to the drawing board, you bring something, we pass it, and then council says, who thought of this? When you were here last, we told you blah, blah, blah. So that's my concern.
Okay, I agree with a lot of what's been said. The build to rent, I understand y'all's is high end and stuff. I'm just really apprehensive about saying that that's the area for that. I'm more leaning toward the option 2 with the multifamily because it does fit with the character of what's already there. When y'all sit there and you give these average rental amounts and stuff. Do y'all have additional fees that go with that take care of them, the maintenance, all that, or is that just that's what it costs to live there, and y'all take out the fees out of that?
Yeah, they don't pay on top of that. Their rent covers all the maintenance.
So painting, the whole 9 yards, except for, I imagine, the inside.
Right. You just, if the tenant vacates, then you do touch up and make ready kind of painting and cleaning. But no one pays above that. There's miscellaneous things for add-on services, but the rent covers all the maintenance.
Okay. But I'm leaning more toward the option 2. What y'all did give us as far as the build to rent, it's a pretty product, but I'm just not sold that it's there at that town center. It might be something that would be fantastic in another area, but for that particular area, as far as I'm concerned, I think that if I was going to pick an option, it would be option 2. Okay, that.
I don't want to belabor the point, but I had some things that traditionally I looked at for zone changes and PD amendments that I didn't hear. If y'all think you've given all the guidance and it's not going to change your opinion, that's great. If you don't mind me asking a few questions, I can do that as well, just to make sure that those things are considered now. And then if City Council were to look back at the hearing, they could gather that information as well. So I'll leave it to your discretion. One of the things whenever we do a zone change or a PD amendment that people look at is density. I understand that you've got a difference between 124 for the build to rent product and 325 units, 60% 1 bedroom and 40% 2 bedroom. But could you tell us what you think the overall density between the two options are, or what the delta is on that?
I think the option 1 is probably about 10. Is it about 10? What is it? Yeah, it's almost 10 of the acre. And the other one would be what? 20? Probably twice that.
Probably twice that. Okay. So in terms of traffic counts, I'm assuming that density, of course, affects trip counts and traffic counts. We would expect a little bit more increase in traffic in that area if they went with option 2 then. Is that correct?
Correct.
Traffic, density. For the build to rent products that City Council has approved in the past, they've required on-site management. I know that you have a resident clubhouse, but would on-site management be included in this?
Yeah.
Or would it, you said a third party, so I didn't know if that was going to be on-site or located somewhere else.
Yeah, it's on site. Both of them are.
Thank you, appreciate that. You mentioned a comparison like not garden style apartments, maybe better than or comparable to the Suba product that's up at the Ivy District. I know that they have some parking garages and the building wraps around it. You're not proposing that on this one though, are you?
This would be surface.
Surface parking, not a parking garage.
Correct.
If there's traffic concerns inside the gates, especially with the build to rent product, I'm assuming that the on-site management would be responsible for making people not obstruct other people's driveways, and it wouldn't use city resources to regulate parking disputes on the private property, right? I know that that's been something that has been touched about for some of the other build to rent products, so I just wanted to make sure that's not something that we have here. And then I think that those were the things that I recall from the discussions when City Council has looked at build to rent products. I didn't know if the planning or community development staff had anything else that normally is considered when we look at zone changes and PD amendments, that if you didn't hear it today, you wanted to flush it out to make sure that if council goes back and looks at this, or if it influences P&Z's opinion, we're sure to trigger that thought for them.
No, understood. So part of the discussion, I believe, that we've had with either option 1 or option 2 was further amenities around the the trail that's around the pond that kind of wraps around this property. So I think that's one thing that we, as staff, will continue to push forward, not only to provide an amenity on site, but amenity within the overall Pearland Town Center. And additionally, you know, with either option 1 or option 2, we're looking to have a complementary architecture to what is in existence. And a lot of these issues were things that we brought up in the first workshop, so that's why we didn't bring them up as additional. But they're concepts that we're looking to continue moving forward with as the PD evolves and we work with the applicant.
Those were the only things I had. And again, I wasn't trying to change anybody's opinion, but I just think it's important to ask the questions that I hear City Council often asks, especially in light of Commissioner Fuertes' comment. You know, they're not here, and these are the things that I sometimes hear from them. So,
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. We always wait on staff to guide us and to give us their opinion on things. And I figured the traffic study would be something that they would be on top of and would let us know, at a later date.
And I've spoken with our city engineer about the traffic conditions. Really and truly, Kirby and Business Center are at their final form. So the traffic is really what the traffic impact analysis will prove is whether timing needs to be adjusted to the lights or if there's potential for a double turn lane to be, or for one of the lanes to be turned into a double turn lane or something to that effect. So, while there are hard constructed things that are a potential to come out of that TIA, the majority of our infrastructure is already in place to handle additional density on the site.
and that's why I was asking about the density and the trip counts, because if Kirby and Business Center are built out and Broadway's built out and you can't make changes to those intersections and that traffic other than the timing of the lights, one of the things you look at in a PD amendment would be its effect on traffic, and maybe you want the higher density for other reasons, and maybe you want lower density for others. They're competing pros and cons of both. But that's when you get to make your zone change, when you get to vote on it, that's when you really get to tell them. But I think everybody's in agreement and letting you know now so that you can plan accordingly instead of finding out on a negative vote that you didn't get it, is probably the most prudent thing to do.
Anybody else got anything to add? All right, then I guess that brings this to a conclusion. We appreciate y'all coming out and leading us through this.
I think it was mentioned that you wish council could hear. I guess we'll be back another time, and you all have heard this presentation, but we may have to present it again, I suppose. So apologies in advance if I have to say the same thing over to you guys, if that's the case. We thought this was joint between P&Z and council, so we look forward to educating them as well.
If y'all were going to do a separate workshop, or if you wanted to do a joint workshop, it could be either. After the original joint workshop, we only require one joint workshop with the UDC. Of course, getting a workshop meeting that's joint tends to be a little bit more of a delay. The calendar for that is not as immediate as it is to get separately in front of the P&Z.
Understood.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to discussion items, City Council update report.
Okay, so let's see. First off, So we had first reading on the zone change for this property to go from R1 to GC. As you remember, this is where the Harmony School District or Harmony Charter School is going to go. That was again for that first reading, and it had a positive outcome with the City Council. We had the second reading for the property just to the south of it to go from general business to GC. That was approved. And then we also had the second reading to take this OTR property to Old Town Mixed Use. That was approved. And last, for the roundup for tonight, we had this R2 property. If you recall, their original proposal was to go to GB, and y'all had made the proposal to go to NS. Council at the first reading approved to go to NS, and then they approved the second reading to go to Neighborhood Services. So that, NS and Neighborhood Services are the same thing. But yeah, that completes the roundup from this past September 11th meeting.
Thank you, Martin. Commissioners' activity report. Anybody got anything? All right. Seeing that we don't have any, the next P&Z regular meeting will be October the 2nd. Does anybody know if they're not going to be able to be in attendance? You won't be here. All righty. Well, seeing that Commissioner Boswell is the only one going to bail on us that night. So.
My attendance is almost perfect.
All right. Let me see. Adjourn at 8:03.